There's a poem about the operator, about the telephone operator. She sits in her chair and she listens to voices from everywhere. She knows all the gossip and she knows all the news. She knows who is happy and who has the blues. She knows all the sorrow and she knows all the strife, and she knows every man who talks mean to his wife. She knows all our sorrows and she knows all our joys, and she knows the girls who are chasing the boys. If the telephone girl told one half that she knew, she'd have the whole town in a stew.
Hi, Tom.
Hi, Mary. How you doing?
Good, thanks. I nodded off in the chair. Didn't hear you coming.
Oh, you got a pretty outfit on today.
Oh, thank you. I figured I would be in the pink.
And where's Mother?
Because I was born in 1912, and so it would have been, you know, in there. I'm 2 weeks older than Mary is. You know Mary McPhee? Do you know her?
No, I don't.
You don't know her?
No.
Her husband used to be in the police force in the summer over here, and but we were brought up together. I mean, we played together and we went to school together, and
I think I know her daughter. Was her daughter a redheaded girl?
sort of, yeah, Mary Lou.
Mary Lou
Yeah.
McPhee. I know Mary Lou McPhee.
Yeah.
You were born in Orleans.
Yeah, East Orleans,
Uh-huh. Whereabouts?
on Great Oak Road. The house is still there.
It is.
Yeah, still standing.
What's the number on Great Oak Road?
I don't know. They didn't have numbers then.
Yeah.
It was right across the street from Mrs. Hanvey, and she lived there with her 2 daughters. And one of her daughters has just died not too long ago, Alice Hanvey. Well, there hadn't been any babies in that neighborhood for a long time, and so Mrs. Hanvey told my mother, she said, when that baby comes, I want you to put a white flag out of the upstairs window. So when I came, the white flag went out the upstairs window. When I was born, my mother was very bad off. She was very sickly. And so she couldn't nurse me until then. Sadie Sherman, they lived up on Main Street, and she was going to have her daughter married. So my mother couldn't nurse me. So Sadie, after Mary was born, Sadie walked down and nursed me for I don't know how long, you know, because she was a big strapping lady, my mother was. And so we almost felt like we weren't just friends, we were relatives. My father was born in Orleans, yeah.
What type of work did your father do?
He was in the life-saving Coast Guard business.
What was his name?
Wilbur Chase. Yeah, he was in for 32 years. And then they had a boating accident, and he got hit in the head, and then he was no good to go walk the beach anymore.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. No, he died at 63.
So your father, Wilbur Chase, he worked out at Nassau Beach at the life-saving station out there?
Yeah, in all, he covered up and down the Cape and all the stations one time or another, yeah.
How would he travel then?
He would travel by feet. He walked everywhere. He walked everywhere. When he was stationed in the East Dam station, he'd walk all the way to Orleans on his day off. And then next morning, he had to be back 10 o'clock. He'd walk all the way back. If he was lucky, somebody would give him a ride. Otherwise, he just would walk.
But he wouldn't use a horse?
No. The station had a horse, but you couldn't use it. Not for that. They just used that to pull wrecks and things, help get out of the water. And when there'd be a wreck, and you could see, I was there one day and I saw a boat came in and it was full of laths. And I saw this man, he was howling, help, help, and he had his hand up in the air, help. And then I watched him go down. So then they had to take the old horse, back it down to the water's edge, and go out and get him and bring him in, because he died. They had many wrecks. They had a wreck a load of blueberries was on one ship that came aground. And boy, you should have seen the people down there collecting blueberries.
That were floating.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it was. I went down, but it was a cold, bitter day. And my brother was with me, and I said, "Here, let me put my hands in your pockets, because I'm freezing." So we went down the beach, and we had my hands in his pockets, and him trying to move. One wreck that a submarine came ashore, and of course they were called to go down to it. It was at the inlet, down here at the Nassau Inlet. And so the boat got swamped. And my father was overboard, and he was under the boat, and they tried to get him out from under the boat, and finally they did, and laid him on the shore. There was a nurse there. Her name was Freeman, and she, evidently she had come and brought hot coffee, because she tended to my father, and we owed his life to her. When the Aldine station closed, was inactive, they only kept one man there, and that was my father. So he used to take me down there, and we would stay all night. And it was so much fun to go upstairs and crawl into the bunk and listen to the waves, come in. You could hear them so plain, it was quiet.
I was just showing you that picture of the old Orleans Inn.
Yeah.
And did you have a story about that you wanted to tell me?
Yes, my mother and father were married there.
Oh, when was that? About how long ago was that?
Oh, gosh, Mary.
1896.
1896.
Aaron Snow owned it then, I think. Or Aaron Snow built it,
He
didn't
built it.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. And she said that they spent the night in the cupola.
Their honeymoon night? Their wedding night?
That's what she said,
Up in the cupola.
in the cupola.
Wow, they must have been wild.
Boy, those had too much milk to drink.
You mentioned your brother. How many in your family?
We had 7 all told.
So you had.
I'm the only one left.
Were you in the middle?
No, I was next to the last.
Next to the
Next to the
youngest.
last.
So there were how many boys and girls? You had?
Two boys and was it 4 or 5 girls? I have to count up.
There were 5 girls.
Let's see. You, Aunt Alice, Aunt Nellie, Aunt Irma. 4 girls and 2 boys, and the baby that died at
Yeah.
birth.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah, we had one baby. Mother had one baby that died, and when it was born, it was a club foot. The heel was where the toe should have been. The foot was turned right around. Didn't live. So I was coming next. Mother said, she said, "I really wanted you." She lost the other one, sister. So I said, "Well, I'm so glad I was wanted." But she told me that I was the best one out of the family. I treated the best of any of them.
Women would have their babies right in the house. There was no such thing as going to the hospital.
Oh,
for the
no.
baby.
No, you either had them at home. I went down to East Dam, Southeast Dam. There was a lady there, Mrs.
Knowles.
Yeah, Mrs. Knowles, and she had like a little small maternity hospital. You could go down there and have your baby, or have it to home.
So she would have been like a nurse. She wasn't really a doctor. Right?
No,
Yeah.
no.
So
Because-
did many women go
Oh, they
there?
did. Yeah, they did. Jack Walsh's wife went there, Helen. Because my brother used to work for Jack at the railroad station. And when Helen's time came, he says to my brother, "Oh, go get her, take her down to the maternity place there." So he took her down.
Well, you don't even think of that today. You know,
Right,
that-
exactly.
Would there have been, if babies were born in the home, would there be maybe a midwife or a nurse that would come and attend?
Yeah, the doctor would come and deliver it at home. I was delivered by Dr. Bessie, the dentist. You know Albion's father.
Sure.
I was delivered by him.
Wow, isn't that something?
And he was both a physician and a dentist.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't realize that. Dr. Bessie lived to be almost 100.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When would he have died? About what year?
Oh, gosh.
Oh, late 70s? Mid
Yeah.
mid to late 70s.
Yeah,
Mhm.
he when he was going to pull the truth, he'd get up and he was a little man. He'd get up and practice sit in your lap and do it. He'd lean on your chest and go in.
I remember Mary McPhee saying she didn't know which hurt worse, having the tooth out or having Dr. Dust his knee and her innards while he got leverage.
Yeah. Yeah, and they told me I rode in the first automobile in town because he had the first automobile in town.
Dr. Bessie had the
Dr.
first car?
Yeah. Yeah.
What were the stores that you used to go to in Orleans? When the food stores, where would you go?
We go
Those
to,
early days.
yeah, there was a O'Keefe store, O'Keefe, and that was in the building which is no longer there. It used to be the Board of Trade building. That was just across the tracks, just beside a snow store. And Lester Quinn worked in there. And then there was T.A. Smith on Cove Road.
Oh, Tommy Smith.
Yeah.
No one told me about Tommy Smith. I think he said something like, when fishing season ended, they'd put all their gear away and they'd say, okay, we're going to have to live on Tommy Smith for the winter.
Right.
Oh boy, he was good. I mean, I guess he had plenty of people owing him money, plenty. Because I can remember we had to do that one, so we raised a pig. And when it came time to slaughter the pig, my mother said, I can't eat that pig. So I said, no, well, I can't either. So we gave it to T.A. Smith, and that helped pay some of the bills that we owed there. Because in those days, what you got for money from the Coast Guard was $30 a month. $30 a month to live on. And so people had to, you know, we had to run a bill up there. And every time they signed over to go, they had to sign over for 3 years. And every time they signed over, they get $3. Big deal, wasn't it?
Mm.
No, big
So
deal.
most of the town in the winter was living off Tommy.
It was, yeah.
Now, Lloyd Ellis married his daughter?
That's right. Yep, he did. Yeah, Edith. Yeah,
And then Lloyd Ellis ended up with the store.
yeah.
That's where I remember. It was always in that same building, right?
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
What's in there now, Mary? The
Cape White Automotive.
right next to Timbuktu Travel.
Right.
Yeah. No, just like Harry Snow, I guess he was so good to people that they didn't have money for their oil or coal. He would let them just put it one side. And I don't know if he ever got paid, really, you know, but he had a good heart. He was a good person. He took, well, before he was ever married, he and father and mother lived in one side of the old store. And I don't know how come, but they adopted my son-in-law, my brother-in-law. They adopted him, and Harry told him, if you will do as you should, behave yourself, I'll make you a partner in the store. Well, when he got kind of wild, Harry just said, no way, no way. And then Harry got married, and then he had these other kids.
He had Bill, and he had what?
Stanley and Bob.
And you remember Smith Boy's store, right?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. A.M. Smith and Son. And Louis Eldridge worked for them for years and years. You don't know Kenneth Eldridge? Kenny Eldridge?
I'm not sure which one he is. I asked you if he was
Yeah.
Acme Laundry, and it's not.
No,
He
no.
was down by Nauset Marine.
He walked.
Tall man with a white mustache.
He walks his dog every single morning.
Yeah, I don't know him.
No. Well, his father was Judah Eldridge, and Judah had a garage Well, it's right across now from where the entrance is that goes down to Stop and Shop, isn't it? And they lived right along the shore. I won't live there anymore, but 3 or 4 houses. And they lived in one of them, and Judah did. And then another one was Larry Ellis's mother and father. They lived there. And I used to love to go over and take Larry, ride the baby coach in the fields, which now where Cook's is.
Oh, yeah. There was a baseball field in one of these old postcards somewhere along the cove. Do you know where that location was?
I think it was just about where the Cook stands now. I believe it was right there.
It seems from the background of the photograph of the baseball field that the angle of the cove, it seems like it was right in that area.
Yeah. Because one day I was going to get him to take him out from the baby carriage, and an airplane went over, and I practically laid on the ground. I was petrified. I never been that close to an airplane before.
Where did you go to school, elementary school to start with?
I went to elementary school in the building that's no longer there. It was a little red schoolhouse, which was now where the Legion Hall is. And we used to have to go down to the basement to eat. They had tables in the basement. We'd go down there to eat, and first thing you know, mice would start running across your feet. Then they built, which is the town offices now, and then we moved across the street from the 9th grade up. So I went there to school too.
Who were some of the kids that you went to school with? Because I know you've got a pretty good memory, so you may be able to rattle a few off.
Well, let's see. Of course, Mary McPhee, she was there. Marcella Eddy, her name was Eldridge, Marcella Eddy, and her twin brother Buster had the dirtiest mouth in town, had scarlet fever, and that laid me up for a long time. And then I lost the use of my legs, and I coughed continually. For 2 weeks I coughed, and nothing would stop it. And so I'd get up to go to school in the morning. I'd shake all over. I couldn't button my shoes until those days where shoes were buttoned. And so Dr. White said to my mother, "Don't send that child back to school. Don't send her back to school." People would go to the library and get books and bring them over and put them on the doorstep because they couldn't come in because we were quarantined. And so when we got through with them, but you couldn't take them back to the library, so they just burnt them. But my sister had it at the same time, and my younger brother had it at the same time. And my sister had it really bad. The doctor we had came from Brewster, Dr. Lodge from Brewster. And he told my mother, he said, the crisis on Nellie, the crisis is going to come tonight around midnight, and I will come down and be here when it comes. It's going to go one way or the other. Well, it came on the snowstorm, but he took his car, headed for Orleans, and got stuck coming into Orleans. The snow got so his old car just wouldn't make it. So he got out and walked the rest of the way to be there at midnight. And he was there at midnight, and she passed the crisis, and she didn't die.
Wow.
But you see doctors today, my gosh, even if it was, sun was out, they'd say, oh, wait, they couldn't come.
Well, that's because they're fishing or playing golf.
You're sure? Yeah, you're right. You're right. Yeah.
What did Orleans look like in those early days that, and unlike how it looks today?
Well,
what were...
There was a house here and a house there.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
No trees, really, right? It was all farm.
Nothing, really, not like we have now.
Yeah.
No,
Was your house on Great Oak Road, was that a farm? Small farm?
no.
So, did you have peddlers that would come around?
Oh, yes, we'd have a fish man and an ice man. The ice man coming. And it was really nice. And then, of course, and then in the summertime we'd have gypsies come. And my mother would always, she heard they were around, she'd always get all us kids. All the kids came to visit and play with us because we were right there on the corner, in the central place. So she'd cut all us kids in and say, come in there, come in, and lock the door because she knew if the gypsies were in town.
The gypsies would make regular visits to Orleans? They were like families of them?
They'd just come in town, and also about the time they landed, there'd be a hurdy-gurdy man come with his monkey.
A what?
Hurdy-gurdy man with his monkey, you know what I mean?
No. Describe the hurdy-gurdy man with the monkey.
Well, he'd have like a tripod, and on it he'd have like a little cage, and in it he had a monkey. And he would play music and get the monkey out of the cage to try and do tricks. Well, that monkey would go over to somebody standing there and run up their arm looking for money.
Oh, he had the monkey trained
Yeah.
to collect money?
Yeah. He'd pick it up and just put it in his mouth. He carried it in his mouth.
Some people would give him money just
Oh
because
yes,
he did
just to see him do it.
Yeah.
Just see him do it, yeah. And then the man would say thank you and pick up his tripod and move on.
So in the summer in Orleans, in the early days here, you had a regular traveling minstrel show coming through town.
And we used to have, they called it the Chautauqua. It was like a moving, let's say for about a week, show. And they'd have all kind of entertainment. And Mary McPhee and I, as soon as they landed in town, of course we had to go where they were and see what they were going to do. So they asked us, would you like to be in the parade? They had a parade. So we said, oh yeah, sure. So they gave us both clown suits to be in the parade. And I had that picture, and now I don't have it anymore because Mary scribbled all over it when she was a child. Well, anyway. So anyway, but we used to go in there, and I used to love to hear they had a Hawaiian act, and I loved the Hawaiian music that they used to play.
Where would this take place?
That was setting where the old fire station uptown was. Let's go there. There was nothing there.
Town Hall Annex.
Town Hall.
Oh, Town Hall Annex.
Yeah. So that was our entertainment for then. But Mary and I tell you, we looked like a couple of doozies.
Dressed up in your clown suits in the parade.
Yep. Mary
Now
had
this would be 20s and 30s?
20s probably.
20s, in the 20s.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. And
Did tourists used to come into Orleans then? Do you remember tourists coming?
oh yes, oh yeah, yeah. We used to have a lot of them too. There was a lot of them owned homes down at the Heights, so they would just come, and they were the nice people, moneyed people of course. And then about August, the poor workers from the city would come in, the ones who didn't have that much money. They'd come in, and they weren't bad. They were pretty good too.
A lot of these people, they would come and stay for the entire summer.
Oh yes, yeah. The ones that had the homes, they had like the Callahans, and they'd have their chauffeurs and everything,
Well, the Callahans used to come then?
Oh,
I
yeah.
know the present generation.
Oh, yeah.
Callahans.
Oh yes, they did.
They come down from Maine, wouldn't they?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
And Mrs. Callahan, her dresses were down to her heels, black. She always wore black.
I wanted to ask you before we forget about the Orleans. What was it called? The Orleans Telephone Company.
Oh yes. Well, it started out. It was upstairs in the building, Cummings building, upstairs. And then after a while, they moved downstairs, and it was called an agent's office. So when I first went to work there, I worked for $3 a week. And we had to also take in telephone bills in there too. People come in and paid the bill. So you did that, and then you worked the board, of course. But my sister, she did relief work at night, all night work. But she was relief, and she was, when they were upstairs, and she was allowed to have, pardon me, one person stay with her. So she said to me, you want to go and stay all night with me? I said, sure. So they had a bed that came down from the wall. So we pulled that down, and when we got into the bed broke. So then we had to get the fire buckets and sand buckets and put them under the bed so that we could sleep. And then,
there was a formal name to this telephone company?
New England Tel.
Oh, it was. It was New England Tel.
Yeah, it was New England Tel.
And it was located. Originally, it was located upstairs where the land hoe is now.
Yeah. Yeah. And
how many people worked there?
Oh, I guess maybe there were maybe 4. But quite often you was working all alone, you know. And then we had a man that used to take care of the furnace and do the dusting and stuff like that. Oh, his name was Overy Mayo. And he lived, there was a house just the other side of where the Texaco station is now. So he'd walk across the backyard. Well, he'd come over and he'd shake the fire down and he'd put the coal on. He'd come up and sit down and talk with her. He was a nice old man. And when he died, his wife decided she was going to do that. So, but she would leave you sitting there freezing to death. She wouldn't come over and shake the fire down and all that stuff. So I called her up one night because I was freezing. I called her up and I asked her, would she please come over and shake the fire down? No, she wouldn't come. So I had to put my buzzer on, go out the front door, go outdoors and down around a little embankment to get into the cellar. And then shake the fire down, put the coal on, open it up, go back upstairs the same way, and go in. And when I started to feel hot, then I have to go all down around and then turn it off.
You worked there from 1929 approximately for how long?
15 years.
15 years, and you worked there, and then I think your sister or 2 sisters worked with you?
Yeah, my older sister Alice worked. She became chief operator after a while because when it went company, and then we didn't have an agent anymore, then we could get benefits from the company and more money. So it was Alice and Irma and Nellie, and then me, 4 of us.
Now I've heard stories about this telephone company in Orleans. People had telephone number 8, 9, 10. I remember my wife telling me that she called once from England and she wanted to talk to her grandfather. And she told the operator in England that she wanted to call the United States and the number was 8. And the operator in England said there's no way there's any number in the United States 8. And she said yes, there was.
There was.
If someone was going out, they'd just leave a message with you.
Oh yeah, they'd call and say, well, we're going over to Mr. So-and-so's tonight if we have any calls, you know. And so, well, we say, do you want to be called over there? No, just tell them we'll be back in a couple hours, you know. It was just like, it was like a big family, you know. Any fires, we handled the fire whistle. And it was way across the room, it was a button like it. And in those days, you had to call all the firemen and tell them there was a fire before you blew the whistle. But say you had a fire in East End. Well, that was 7 times you had to blow that thing for out-of-town fire. You'd go over there and stand and put your finger on it, count. It goes up and count, and then it comes down. Do that 7 times. While you're doing that, the people are calling. You go back to the board. Well, where's the fire? Where's the fire? Where's the fire? So finally we were told, don't tell anybody where the fire is. Just say, sorry, we can't tell you. because it was, you know, like that all the time. I mean, firemen's wives would call and say, "Where's the fire? Where's the fire?" You know? And it got to be so that you just couldn't do it, especially when you had to be alone and work and do that too.
Mm.
And then, well, like paying telephone bills. They'd come in, pay telephone bills. And if you were alone, you're standing up, you're working 3 positions. And then one day I got, there was a woman standing there, I'll tell you who it was Doris Clark from East Ham.
Right.
She was trying to pay her bill. Well, I just couldn't get to her because I thought she can see how busy I am, but anybody on the other end can't. In the middle of it, I got this call. I answered this line. This lady said, "Oh." I said, "I guess she's passed out." I knew it was an elderly lady, and I knew what line she was from. So I just dropped, you know, everything and called Dr. White. Well, he wasn't home. So I called Dr. Bell in Wellfleet, and his wife said he's in Orleans. I'll tell you where. So I called where she told me he was, and he said, "I'll go right over." It was on Monument Road. "I'll go right over." When he got over there, the poor thing, she was bleeding to death. She'd been using a very sharp knife, and she was elderly. And she'd cut herself so bad that he said, the doctor said that if I hadn't done that, she would have bled to death. And I had a very nice letter from her daughter in Boston afterwards saying, "Thank you for saving my mother's life."
That telephone station, that telephone office, what, did you work till the end when it closed down, or when?
I worked when they cut over. They cut over in '41 and moved down to where the Head and Foot Shop is now, in that building. No, I was still there then. And I had made myself a promise, if I ever did have any children, that I was going to quit work and take care of them. And not knowing I ever would have any, because I was told I never could. And when I was going to have her, Dr. Kelly told me, "You're going to have twins." All the way through, you're going to have twins. Well, I was thrilled, because I'd have had 3 if they'd let me. But I said, "Oh, this is great," because it's a little late in life to have a child. And so he right up to the very end, he said twins. So we planned everything double. We got double everything, and then when she came along, it was just one. And so in the hospital, I said to the nurse the next morning, "Where's my other one?" And she says, "Your other what?" And I said, "My other child." And she said, "Oh, you only had one."
You know, one of the people I wanted to ask you about, you mentioned that Cummings building.
Yeah.
And that's where the pants factory was. And I guess the 2 businesses in town, and the big ones, were Mayo's Duck Farm and Henry Cummings' pants factory.
Right.
Wasn't it? You must have known Henry Cummings.
Oh, yes.
What was he like?
Oh, he was very tall, thin man, and he was twitchy, you know. And he'd have a little room in the back of his store. He'd stay in that until a customer came in. And then when he had a customer, he'd come out and go, "Yes? Oh, Mr. Cummings, do you have so-and-so today?" Well, I look and see. If he didn't have it, he said, "Oh, they don't make it anymore. They don't make this whatever you wanted anymore," because he didn't have it. But I used to like to go in there, and he had a lot of strange things in his store. I used to like to go in there now. Yeah.
Did you know Rowena Myers?
Oh, well, yeah.
When was the last time you saw Rowena?
Oh, last time I went shopping, it hasn't been for quite a while. I saw her there, and we were talking about the hurricanes that used to come in 38 and 45, I guess it was, or something. And we would talk about that. But, and she wears her hair the same today as she did way, way back in 1920. Same thing.
She works very hard on that beautiful property.
Oh, yes, yes, yeah.
That's a wonderful house,
Oh.
yellow house.
Yeah, she had a sister, Edith, that she died when she was really a real young girl. I'd say 20 or something like that. I think she had TB.
Roland Mayo told me she died of consumption.
Right.
Yeah, yeah, that's right.
That was TB.
Yeah.
That's what they referred
Yeah.
to as TB.
Yeah. And Rowena, we got engaged. She was engaged once. I can see him now, a little short guy with blonde hair. She was going to get married, and for some reason, all of a sudden, no. Her mother probably said, "No, you're not going to leave me alone," because that's the type she was. You're not going to get married and leave me alone. So Rowena stuck. All right, never got married.
And Rowena's mother lived in that same house?
Oh yeah, they all lived there together. Yeah, and her mother, when she walked, you'd think she was walking on eggs. She would, ha. You know, she was like the earth was not good enough to step on. In those days, that's when the first of the summer baseball players used to come, and they stayed at the Orleans Inn.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, they stayed there, and
Were they the Orleans Cardinals then? Was
I don't
their
know.
name the Orleans Cardinals?
I guess I think that was what the name was, and one of them that came was Alfred Leonardi. Remember, you know Alfred Leonardi? You don't know him? Well, anyway, they were only allowed to have a glass of milk at a meal. So Alfred says to me, "Doris, if you give me another glass of milk, I'll let you dance at my wedding." Well, I got him the milk, but I never got to dance at his wedding.
So the Orleans Cardinals were staying at the Orleans Inn.
Yeah.
Got to know probably some of the waitresses there.
Well, I tell you, and the cars that would drive up there with the young girls in it, looking, you know, "We'll take you to Howard to play, or we'll take you to Sharon to play," and fun. One of them, like Peg Brooks, you know, married Dr. Wright. They were right there to take them places, and but there was a nice bunch of boys, but then they got fed well too.
That was in the 1920s that the
Yeah.
Orleans Inn.
Mm-hmm.
Because that same thing goes on in, here it is 1991, and I saw that same thing going on this summer at Eldridge Park.
Exactly. Groupies.
The more things change, the more they stay the same.
And I went, before I waited down table there, I went to do wash dishes. Well, the woman that ran it, she was a hell on wheels. She had made me wash the dishes in Fell's naphtha soap. It was strong. Well, I would work and I'd wash and wash. So one night, it was about midnight. I hadn't got home, so my sister came down, walked down there to see where I was. And so she said, "You're not going to do this anymore. Work like this." So I said, "Well, I'll try a little while longer. I want the money." But one night, I couldn't stand up straight. I was bent over. I could not stand up straight on account of being bent over so long. I got on my hands and knees and crawled from the Orleans Inn up to the corner where we lived. You see me doing it today, my God, I'd be hamburged. Somebody'd run over me. But I had to crawl. I couldn't stand up.
Wow.
And so my sister and my mother said, "This is it. You're not going back there to work." So the next year, another woman headed from Falmouth, Mrs. Gray. What her name was Gray? Grant, Mrs. Grant. And she was the nicest person to work for. She was so good. And that's when I waited down table. And she had a husband that loved to tip his elbow. In fact, he'd go down the cellar and tip his elbow. He's supposed to be down there making bread. He was making bread all right. Heaven knows what he put in it, if he ever finished it. And
Well, you know, beer is that's liquid bread. That's all beer is.
well, 10 to 1, that's what he was using. You know, because sometimes the bread, he wouldn't have any bread. He wouldn't have done it. So Doris, you go up to Noel's Bakery and get some rolls. Okay, Doris.
Clarence Knowles' bakery?
Yeah.
Did you know Clarence Knowles?
Oh, did I? Yes.
I understand he was a character.
He was. He was.
I talked to Gaston Naggio
Yeah.
about him. He said,
Yeah.
boy, if you didn't know Clarence Knowles, you really missed something.
That's true. And his wife was a town nurse.
Anything that you remember about Clarence Knowles and the bakery? That's where Timbuktu Travel is now, isn't it?
Oh, or is it where Cove Cycle used to be? Which building was the bakery?
Oh, it's where well, where Timbuktu was first. Where was she? Is she same place?
I think so.
She is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the building Gaston Naggio owned.
That's right.
And Clarence Knowles
Yeah.
used to work for Clarence, and then Clarence had it prior to that.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's what it
I
was.
remember going in there, and
Oh.
he used to always, unlike the way you describe H.K. Cummings, who would be in that back room, I understand Clarence would always have something to say to the ladies, and he'll always have quips.
Always had a remark. Always had a remark. Yes. Yeah. He could hear him coming. His feet were about that long. And he'd go slap, 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 you know. And then, of course, he had girls work for him in the back. They're making bread and stuff. And it smelled so good when you'd go in there, you know. Oh, yeast bread. And he didn't care who was around. He'd talk just as loud as he wanted to say what he wanted to do. That was Clarence Knowles. And his wife was a little meek lady.
Now, you used to live in a really interesting location to me because I was never aware that there was a house there on the corner of Route 28 and Main Street, the park lot next to the library, where the library is now.
Yeah.
You know, I've seen a lot of photographs of town, although that may be shown in some of Cummings' photographs. I've never realized or never saw a photograph of a house there. And when did you live there?
Oh, gosh. I guess when I was probably in my 20s.
And it was a big house?
Oh, yeah, 13 rooms. And diagonally across, which would be like in back of Academy Place, was where Beth Bishop used to be. Mr. Gears and his wife lived there. And they used to sell eggs, and they had cows. And he would take his cows in the morning and drive them across the road to right across to where the bank is on the corner there now. Go right across, up where Ellis's store is. And the cows would graze in there all day. He had Jersey cows. I can see them now. Yeah, black and white. And then at night, he'd go and drive them back home again. Well, you couldn't do that today. They'd be picked off in no time.
Did you ever used to go out to Nauset Beach in the summer? Did the kids used to go
Yeah,
there?
yeah. Yeah, we used to go on picnics down there. My sister would always hire a taxi and take us to the beach and then say, come back in such a time, you know. And that's what we used to do. But in those days, I mean, we used to love to go over, and Susie Gears would say, you go out and collect the eggs if you want to. So we thought that was great to go out and collect the eggs, you know, out in the hen house. And Mr. Gears, he always wore a cowboy hat, wore a cowboy hat. They had a little gas station. I think there was one pump out front. And Susie tended to that. And she would wear long skirts. And she'd wear like a real ruffle skirt. And then another one over it. Well, you went there to buy gas. And if you had change coming, I was standing there. I don't know what people thought. She'd stand there and pull up a skirt and go down into a pocket. She had a pocket in her underskirt where she kept a pocket with change. And that was Susie.
So that was her trademark.
But the nicest people, they were very, very nice people.
You know, the one other thing is, she just told me about a newspaper in town.
Oh, yes.
The Neighborhood News.
Oh, Harry and Betty, yeah.
Harry had it before Betty did, before he married
That's
Betty.
right, yeah, no, he did. Yeah, it was Harry. It was a nickel, only a nickel. And you got two sides of, I think it was two sides of the paper.
Who owned this newspaper?
Harry Childs.
Harry Childs. And that was really the first newspaper.
Yes, I
Called
believe.
Neighborhood News. When
I
would that
believe
have
so.
been? Approximately. When do you think that?
Oh,
Probably in the 30s, don't you think? Because Grandpa's obituary and a big account of the funeral was in that.
well, yeah, I guess maybe it was. And
30s and early 40s even.
yeah, he started out tapping shoes and putting heels on shoes, you know, and stuff. And then he went into the paper at the same time.
So the Neighborhood News was the forerunner to the Cape Codder and the Oracle.
I would say so. Yeah.
Well, I guess my final question would be, what do you think of Orleans now? And
I don't like it.
you don't like it?
I don't like it.
What was your favorite period in Orleans?
I think my favorite period was when I went to work for the telephone company. And I went to work for the telephone company.
So how did you like growing up in our little town of Orleans?
I liked it. I liked knowing everybody. There was just a nice feeling of security, familiarity.
Yeah. Do you think you would have preferred now growing up in that small town atmosphere, or would you think maybe Boston or a city would have?
No, I still think a small town atmosphere.
Yeah. Well, this is a great town to grow up in.
It really, it was.
You went. Where was the elementary school that you went to?
First, where is now the town hall, and then they built the new elementary school up on Eldridge Parkway, where it is today.
Mm-hmm.
And then in between, I also was at St. Joan of. Do you remember St. Joan of Arc School?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, I went there for 5th through 8th.
That was during your Catholic period.
That was during my Catholic period, exactly. And then the high school, of course, was where the middle school is now.
Yeah. And you came back to Orleans?
Well, I tried teaching in Vermont very, very briefly, and then I realized Orleans was the only place I could be happy, and came back.
Yeah.
And then finally, the job opened up with the town, and I got that and stayed there for 17 years.
So you've seen quite a few of the local politicians go through the town hall.
That's the truth.
The Charlie Moores.
Charlie Moore was just before I got there.
So Dick Adams was before you got.
Yeah. When I was hired, it was Gaston, Paul Henson, and Dean Howerton.
Gaston kept things lively at the town hall.
Oh, Gaston was great.
Yeah.
He was always cheerful. He'd go down the hall singing. Sometimes he'd make up his own slightly risque lyrics to traditional tunes. I remember hearing him go down the hall singing in that marvelous voice of his every evening after dark while goosing statues in the park. I remember a great story about him, and remember Viola Terrell, who lived in H.K. Cummings' house at Academy Place? Little bitty lady with a very sharp tongue. Well, she ran into him in the hall one day, and they were passing the time of day, and she said, do you know whose house I live in? And Gaston didn't have a clue, but he said, of course I know whose house you live in. She said, I bet you don't. He said, sure I do. Excuse me just a second. Came dashing in. Mary, whose house does she live in? I said, H.K. Cummings. He came back. He said, how could you think I wouldn't remember? You live in H.K. Cummings' house. Oh yeah, he was great to work with. He was always fair, always had time for you. When I first worked there, my supervisor was Gertrude Bessem Millard. You remember Gert?
Of course I do.
She was great. She was so funny. She used to be able to terrify people with that cold blue stare of hers. And not many people realized that she was pure marshmallow inside and the whole thing was a facade. She was the kindest person, but she didn't want you to know it.
She told people what she thought too.
Oh, indeed she would. I She always kept a barrier of books and papers between her and the public, and she would glance over her half glasses at them like she was daring them to ask a question. And yet, when they did ask a question, she always knew the answer. She knew everything way back. And she was my role model. I thought, if I can remember and be able to tell people stuff the way Gertrude does, that I will have achieved my goal.
When she was 4 years old, she was reading. She came to me one morning and she told me something that was in the newspaper. And I said, where did you see that or hear that? She said, I'll show you. Because she got the paper, and sure enough, there it was in the headlines. So here she went to school. When she went to school, she was bored in the first grade because she didn't read. And I like to read. So the teacher let her read the little golden books to the kids to make her feel better.
Wow.
You see, I told you I was supposed to have twins. Well, I got the one, but the brains of two.
Oh, that's a great way of putting it.
That's nice.
She's like a father. He had his head in a book all the time. And if he couldn't have a book, he had it in the telephone book, reading the telephone book.
I've been on to read the telephone book too.
So,
You would think that that mind would begin to fill up with all these facts. Like,
Yeah.
I'm sure you didn't walk out of the Orleans Town Hall with all that tax information in your head and all those owners and all those parcel numbers. And the minute you walked out the town hall, it didn't just evaporate out of your mind.
No.
And you still have plenty of room in there to absorb.
I sometimes feel I wish I could sort of put a drain in and turn a handle and get rid of some of the extraneous information.
What's the name of that book of poems that you wrote?
The second one is called Handle with Care.
Oh, I didn't realize that you had done a second one.
The first one was back in '78. That was called Tapestry.
That's
And then the current one is Handle with Care. That's probably the one you've seen. Marie Merzen had it. And
I saw Tapestry.
Did you see?
Yeah,
Oh, that's right.
That's the one I have.
Ah, that's right. I'd forgotten.
I like that one the best.
That's right. That's the one Marie has too. You're
That's
right.
yeah.
You're right, because she loved the poem about people thinking friendship was a bottomless cookie jar, and once she brought me a cookie jar in honor of the poem.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
Oh, that's sweet.
That was so neat. Oh, I have a lot of great memories of the town as it used to be. I find myself growing less fond as it changes. I find myself getting fonder of Brewster, to tell you the truth. But there is just a nice feeling about walking around the town. I like it on a misty day when you feel the closeness to the sea. And I love Main Street. I love the old houses and what trees are left. And there's a sense of wonder still, even with all the changes. There's just something so special about it.
So what were some of the things that you enjoyed doing around here growing up?
Oh, I used to like to go to the movies, and after the movies we liked to sit on the bench next to what's now CVS.
Mm-hmm.
And watch. Mother and I would go to the first show when I was a kid, and then we'd sit on the bench and watch people going to the second show or coming out of the second show.
Yeah.
And it used to be fun to go to Howard Johnson's for an ice cream cone.
That's when Reggie Sprague owned it,
Right,
and that's where the fog cutter is now.
right.
I think that was the first Howard Johnson
It was.
franchise outside of the original.
Yeah, it was. And then going up to watch the train come in, even though by then it was only a freight train. When I was a little kid, that was a big deal to go up and watch the train come in.
So you never rode the train?
No, the passenger trains had stopped by the time I was born.
Remember the engineer, I guess it was, he used to took to you when you was at Grandma?
That's right. My grandmother lived where Stan Gove lives now, the blacksmith shop.
We sold that house to Stan Gove.
Oh, fantastic. And I've always felt like my whole childhood is still in that house.
Now, who was your grandmother?
That was Mother's mother, Nellie Chase. And Aunt Alice actually owned the house, Alice Freeman. And that used to be a wonderful thing to go and visit Grandma and on a Saturday and stay for supper. We'd always have hot dogs and macaroni and cheese. Mm-hmm. And the train, of course, ran right by there, and the engineer would always wave to me.
First he start shooting,
That's right. He'd blow the whistle and then he'd wave, and that always just made my day.
Do you go off Cape very often?
Not as much as I'd like to. Once in a while I go to Vermont or Maine or down to Mystic. Went up to Plymouth last week, big trip. But I don't get off the Cape as much as I'd like to.
Yeah.
But even whenever I do go off, there's something special about coming back over the bridge.
She misses her mother.
Well, that too, sure.
Well, I can see why. You're very entertaining. I can sit here for days.
Oh, thank you. Who cares if you watch?
Oh, and those are the headphones?
Yeah. From wearing this so many years, I got had a callus like a corn on my ear. And I had a supervisor's card because I would have to walk from one end of the board to the other to help anybody out. And this weight is heavy, and it weighs I don't know how much, but and this is heavy too. But
Well, so then you just plug that in to the board, the trunk line?
yeah, plug that into the board. And I could plug it in and hear anybody down the line. They wouldn't know I was plugging them, listening to them, what they said. But I love the work. I really love the work.
Mm.
See, my number is still on there. Two.
Oh, wow.